Honoring your worthiness to receive. In order to become a manifester, literally taking part in the process of co-creating your life and attracting to yourself the objects of your heart's desire, you must know that you are worthy of receiving. This will mean examining the attitudes that you knowingly and unknowingly hold about your life. Your thoughts, which are the architects of the foundation of your material world, are what you want to examine. You can remind yourself all day long that the same power that brought anything into the physical world also brought you. But if you do not feel worthy, you will disrupt the natural flow of energy into your life and create a blockage that makes manifestation impossible. The fifth principle reminds you that you are worthy of abundance. If your thoughts are based on an image of unworthiness for any reason at all, you will manifest what those thoughts impart to the universal mind. The energy described in the fourth principle will align with what it is that you radiate. As a man thinks, so is he, are not just empty words. Thinking that abundance is incompatible with spirituality is a myth that influences many of us and is the largest impediment there is to feeling worthy. Take a look around your world and notice the abundance and endlessness of our universe. It goes on and on beyond our ability to imagine its vastness. This abundance flows from the same energy that comprises our fundamental essence. It is you. You are it. Material form is how spirit makes itself known to us while we are in form ourselves. Spirit manifests in trees and oceans and fish, birds, minerals, vegetables, flowers, and you. When we adopt an attitude of spirit being incompatible with matter, we are denying the spirit that is in matter as its originating energy. We also deny the validity of ourselves as spiritual beings. When we shift to seeing that together they comprise one harmonious whole, we remove the stigma of selfishness. Just as each one of us is one harmonious whole comprised of spirit and matter, so too is the entire universe. The process of life taking form is a mystery. That mystery is governed by a creative energy that is knowable when we genuinely feel worthy of receiving its blessings in form. Abundance is the way of the creative force in the universe. You are entitled to have abundance in your life and to radiate prosperity to all that you encounter in your world. Nothing is gained by making yourself small and insignificant other than to manifest smallness and insignificance into your life.
This creative source reacts to your belief in shortages with a fulfillment of your belief. So if you believe and know and are certain that you can't attract abundance into your life, but I want to tell you tonight, you tuned in to somebody who knows about abundance. I have always been able to create abundance in my life. When I was a little kid, all the other kids in the places that I lived and so on, and even when we got back at home with my mom, pop bottles. You remember soda pop bottles? You could collect them, little knee-high bottles and Pepsi-Cola bottles and Coca-Cola bottles, and 2 cents if you took them back. I was a master at collecting pop bottles. I could manifest a pop bottle just like that. It was just... We used to have furnaces that had coal in them, and I would go along and I would empty people's ashes that they would set out. So just take it out to the alleys. I would go to the grocery store, and because my imagination was always working on abundance, I would carry groceries out for little old ladies. You know what I'm doing today? Right now? Collecting pop bottles and taking out ashes and taking out groceries for little old ladies. Just a bigger stage. See, if I came to this source and said, I don't have enough, this source doesn't know how to react to I don't have enough. This source is an endless supply. It's like the ocean. You can take a 10 million gallon tank to the ocean of abundance, and you can take it out every hour, or you can take a thimble once a year. And the ocean doesn't care. It makes no difference to the ocean because everything returns to this source. Every time I walk, wherever I go, in fact, it happened to me this morning. I found a dime. A dime? That's like major. A dime. That's 10 pennies. That's 5 bottles. And whenever I bend over, and I notice that it gets a little further away, I bend over and I pick up this coin, and I always say, thank you, God, for this symbol of abundance that always flows into my life. Never once have I ever said, how come only a dime? I need $1,000. Why are you only giving me a dime? The face of abundance is like you have to come to this source not with what is missing, because it doesn't know. There's nothing missing. This source, which is the source of all, doesn't know about what's missing. When you say, please give me what is missing, it'll just reaffirm your belief in things being missing. You have to come to this source by being abundant, by being in a state of gratitude, by being thankful for all that you are, and seeing yourself as attracting more and more of that, and being willing to give it away.
There's a sacred sound that lives beneath all sound. It is not loud, it is not urgent, and it is not outside of you. It is the still hum of your eternal being, a vibration so gentle, so constant, that it is often drowned out by the noise of your thinking, the clutter of your conditioning, and the hurried chase of your ego. But it is always there, waiting. Like an ancient friend who never left, just quietly sat beside you, trusting you'd one day remember to listen. This is the sound of silence. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of truth. You were not born into noise. You arrived as silence. The infant does not seek to be impressive, clever, or approved of. The infant is simply here. No story, no shame, no schedule. Just being, just presence, just soul. And it is in that state, untouched by past, unseduced by future, that the divine speaks clearest, not through thunder or spectacle, but through the quiet whisper that arises when the mind finally surrenders its grasp and the heart opens to the eternal. You have been told to seek answers. You have been taught to strive, to push, to acquire information and validation and success. But the greatest truths will not be shouted through effort. They will be revealed in stillness. Not because they are hiding, but because you are running. Running from moment to moment, from task to task, from thought to thought, from self to self. And yet, everything you are running toward is resting peacefully inside the very silence you keep avoiding. The world teaches us that silence is empty, but silence is not empty. Silence is full. It holds the totality of wisdom, the blueprint of every sacred life, the knowing that existed before language ever did. Silence is the space where your soul sings without needing to be heard. It is where your fear dissolves, not because it is solved, but because it is seen through. Silence reveals that there was never anything to solve, only illusions to let go of. We confuse activity with purpose. We confuse noise with value. And so we shout our affirmations. We obsess over fixing ourselves. We perform our spirituality like a show. But the soul is not impressed by performance. The soul does not clap when you look awakened. It only smiles when you are. An awakening is not a performance. It is a return, a homecoming to that original silence where you are not this role, not this pain, not even this name. You are awareness itself. In silence, you stop being a person with problems. You become a presence with power. Because the problems only exist in the theater of mind, and silence turns off the projector. Suddenly you realize the struggle was never out there. It was the noise you allowed in here. It was the commentary, the resistance, the narrative. And when the narrative pauses, so does the suffering. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped believing your thoughts were the world. When you begin to rest in silence, not as an escape, but as a return, you realize something extraordinary. That all your searching was holy, but unnecessary. You never had to become enough. You already were. You never had to find peace. You just had to stop fighting yourself long enough to feel it. You never had to be saved. Only reminded. We live in a society that glorifies answers but fears stillness. But stillness is the answer. Not a word, not a doctrine, not a formula, but a state of being. Stillness is the meeting point between you and God, where no translation is needed. No achievements, no apologies, no explanations, just presence, just truth, just you, stripped of all the noise you thought you needed to be loved. You may have believed that healing requires struggle, but healing is what happens when struggle ceases. Healing begins not when you try harder, but when you surrender deeper. It begins when you finally sit, not with an agenda, but with reverence. When you stop performing your pain and begin witnessing it. When you stop asking, how do I fix this? And begin asking, who is aware of this? Because in that question, something shifts. The pain becomes a cloud and you, the sky. Silence reminds you that you are not the storm. You are the space in which the storm appears. The emotions will rise and fall. The thoughts will dance and disappear. The stories will come and go. But who you are does not move. Who you are is not a wave. It is the ocean. And the ocean is never afraid of its waves. There is a divine intelligence that lives in you, not outside you, not above you, not later, but now. It does not speak in language, but in presence. It does not need convincing, it already knows. It is the voice that says, you are held, even when your mind says you are falling. It is the pulse that reminds you in every breath that you are enough simply because you are. And the more you listen, the less you chase. The more you feel it, the less you need. You do not need to yell at the universe to be heard. You only need to be quiet enough to hear it whisper back. It has always been whispering, but not into your ears, into your awareness, not into your intellect, into your being. And the only thing that ever blocked the message was the belief that it should come in a different form. The mind says, give me proof. But the soul says, just feel. And when you stop needing your healing to look dramatic and instead let it feel sacred, you will know the answer was never far. It was right here. Underneath the noise, beneath the drama, beneath the grasping, the answer you seek is in silence. Because in silence, you become what you seek. You do not find peace. You remember that you are peace. And if you are brave enough to sit in that silence without your mask, without your resume, without your wounds, something astonishing begins to happen. The false self begins to fade. The roles begin to melt. The seeking begins to slow. And in the space that's left, a presence arises. Gentle, quiet, but unmistakable. It does not demand attention because it already has your love. It does not try to impress you because it is you. There is a rhythm to life that you cannot hear when you are shouting, but when you become quiet enough, the rhythm returns. It's the rhythm of breath, of grace, of nature. The rhythm of a heart that knows it is connected to something infinite. And in that rhythm, you do not have to force clarity. You do not have to demand purpose. You simply return to what you've always been aware, alive, whole. And the irony is, the more you silence the mind, the louder your soul becomes. Not in volume, but in truth. Not in noise, but in knowing. You become fluent in the language of the present. You begin to see God not as a distant judge, but as the quiet space between your thoughts. You begin to live less from story, more from stillness. Less from effort, more from essence. Let the world keep chasing noise. Let others fill their days with more opinions, more distractions, more labels. You return to the sacred. You return to the place where truth does not have to be explained, only felt. Where your worth is not earned, only remembered. Where your next step does not need to be mapped, only trusted. This is the gift of silence. It doesn't teach you what to think. It teaches you how to listen. And when you listen, truly listen, you hear something profound, not a new instruction, not a divine commandment, but a remembering of what you are beneath the personality, a remembering of the vast, limitless being who has always been whole, a remembering that life is not trying to test you, it's trying to reveal you. So stop waiting for the thunder. Stop demanding that the universe speak in your language. Learn to feel the message in the silence, and you'll realize you were never disconnected. You were just distracted. You were never the noise. You only believed in it. You only learned to identify with it the rushing thoughts, the echoing doubts, the applause and the criticism, the voices that told you who to be, how to perform, what to suppress, and what to fear. But underneath it all, you were the one who heard the noise, not the noise itself. And that which hears the noise is not disturbed by it. That is your essence. And it has never once left you. Silence is not something you create. It is what remains when all the clutter is released. It is what remains when you stop trying to control how you appear and instead allow yourself to be what you are. Silence is the space between judgment and acceptance, between fear and surrender, between the false identity and the true self. In silence, the veil lifts, not with effort, but with grace. And you see clearly not with the eyes, but with the soul. There is a sacred difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is the product of noise, of unconscious habit and conditioned emotion. Response is the fruit of silence. A person who lives in silence does not react from fear. They respond from love. They do not echo the world's chaos. They embody its stillness. They do not need to be loud to be powerful, because their presence speaks louder than any words ever could. The spiritual masters of this world, the ones who radiate peace, they are not empty of emotion. They are empty of illusion. They have stopped identifying with the noise in their head and started listening to the wisdom of the still place within. They are not above suffering. They are simply not ruled by it. They have made a home in the silence. And from that home, they bring light wherever they go. You have the same light. It is not lesser. It is not distant. It only asks that you slow down long enough to see it flickering beneath the rubble. There is a divine intelligence behind all of creation. The tree does not rush its growth. The sun does not force its rise. The river does not panic when the rocks appear. Nature moves in harmony because it does not resist its own unfolding. But we as humans have forgotten how to trust. We interrupt our own peace with mental commentary. We mistake urgency for importance. We judge ourselves by how fast we can move rather than how deeply we can listen. But when you return to silence, you return to nature, you return to the rhythm of the soul, which is slow, soft, eternal. You begin to trust again, not in outcomes, but in alignment. Not in control, but in connection. You realize that life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a presence to be felt. And the deeper you go into that presence, the less you need from the outside. Because wholeness is no longer an achievement, it's your starting point. You are not incomplete. You are not a mistake. You are not lost. You are a wave that forgot it belonged to the ocean. And silence is the place where the wave remembers. You do not need more effort. You need more surrender. You do not need to fix your life. You need to witness it without judgment. The ego will tell you to strive. The soul will ask you to rest. Because in resting, you come home. Let it be okay not to have an answer. Let it be okay to sit with the question. Let it be okay to drop the mask you've worn for so long that you forgot what your face looked like. You do not need to impress the divine. You are the divine. And God is not keeping score. God is waiting in the silence not to evaluate you, but to embrace you. There is no punishment in stillness, only revelation. You will not lose anything real by going silent. You will only lose the noise that was pretending to be real. You will only lose the false self, the one who needed to prove, to earn, to defend, to shout. The real self has no need for any of that. The real self is already whole, already enough, already divine, and it lives always in the silence. Listen not with your ears, but with your being. Listen to the spaces between the words. Listen to the breath between the thoughts. Listen to the presence behind the moment. This is where God lives. This is where truth lives. This is where you live when you finally stop trying to be someone and remember how to simply be. You have been seeking peace as if it were somewhere else. But peace is not a location. It is a return to your natural frequency. And you cannot return by running, only by stopping, only by letting go, only by releasing the belief that peace must be earned or that truth must be proven. Peace is not proven, it is felt. And it is felt in the moment when you become quiet enough to notice what has always been here. The past has a voice, the future has a voice, but neither voice belongs to now. And now is where your power lives. Now is where the soul breathes. Now is where healing happens. You do not heal by understanding the past. You heal by letting go of the need to drag it into the present. You do not awaken by fearing the future. You awaken by realizing that the present moment is eternal and nothing truly sacred can be missed from it. In silence, there is no comparison. There is no competition. There is no one to be better than, no one to be beneath. In silence, there is no role to play. There is only love, only presence, only truth. It is in silence that you remember the unshakable truth. You were never broken. You were simply buried under ideas that never belonged to you. The answer you seek is not louder than your pain. It is softer than your thoughts. It is not above you or beyond you. It is within you, waiting for you to stop pushing and start allowing. To stop asking what's next and start asking what's now, because what's now is where the divine is dancing. What's now is where the sacred breath of life is still singing you into existence. And it sings the same song to all of us. Be still. You are already home. You do not need more knowledge. You need less noise. The noise is not just in your environment, it's in your head. It's the static of a mind conditioned to fear stillness, to equate being with doing, and to see rest as laziness rather than reverence. But when you are silent, you begin to unlearn the false truths you were taught. You realize that everything you were chasing was born of the belief that you were not already whole. And that belief, not your circumstances, was the source of your suffering. The mind is loud because it is unsure. The soul is silent because it is certain. Certainty does not shout. Truth does not need volume. Real wisdom arrives like the sunrise, not with fanfare, but with radiance. It does not beg to be noticed. It simply illuminates. And silence is the place where this illumination becomes visible. Not outside you, within you. You have confused silence with absence. But silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of space. The space in which sound arises, dances, and dissolves. Just as you are not your thoughts, but the space in which thoughts appear. Just as you are not your body, but the awareness that watches the body age while the spirit remains ageless, you are the one who sees, the one who knows, the one who simply is. And this infinite presence cannot be harmed, cannot be diminished, cannot be lost. It can only be forgotten in noise. Let the silence teach you. Let it teach you that your wounds are not who you are, that your worth was never up for negotiation, that you do not need to climb a ladder to touch God, you only need to sit down and listen. The higher self does not live in the clouds, it lives in the breath, in the pause. In the moment you stop trying to be and simply become aware that you already are, every moment spent in silence is a homecoming, a return from exile, a reunion with the source that never left you, only waited patiently for you to remove the walls. You thought life abandoned you, but it didn't. You just forgot how to hear it. You mistook the silence for punishment when it was actually an invitation. An invitation to stop, to breathe, to feel the divine frequency beneath the chaos. There is a holiness in quiet moments that the ego cannot comprehend because the ego thrives on noise. It defines itself by conflict, by identity, by motion. The ego says, be more, do more, prove more. But the soul whispers, you are. That's it. You are. Not what they said, not what you did, not what you feared. Just you are. That is the beginning of freedom. Not a transformation into something else, but a return to what has always been. When you learn to be still, you become intimate with the divine. Not through belief, but through being. You don't need a new belief system. You need an undisturbed moment with your own presence. That is where you meet God, not through dogma, but through awareness. Not through rituals alone, but through the reverence of attention. There is no temple more sacred than the present moment. No scripture more direct than your breath. You are not behind. You are not too late. You have not failed. These are stories written by the mind that does not yet trust the unfolding of life. But the soul has no calendar. It only has now. And in the now, there is no judgment, only clarity. There is no guilt, only understanding. There is no shame, only compassion. The silence knows this. It is not against you. It is holding you. Softly, constantly, waiting only for you to become still enough to feel it. There are seasons in your life when words will not be enough, when advice will ring hollow, when the mind, no matter how brilliant, cannot lead you home. In these seasons, silence becomes your teacher. A teacher that says nothing, yet shows you everything. A teacher that gives no answers, yet dissolves every false question. A teacher that does not fix you because you were never broken, only buried beneath noise. If you could only sit in silence long enough, you would begin to feel the edges of your identity melt. The roles you've played, the expectations you've carried, the wounds you've named yourself after all, begin to fall away. And what is left is not a void, it is not emptiness, it is fullness. The fullness of being. The stillness that speaks louder than any accomplishment ever could. This silence is not passive. It is not weak. It is the most powerful force in the universe. It creates worlds. It births stars. It transmutes pain. It dissolves fear. It reminds you of your eternal nature. And when you align with it, you stop trying to win at life. You start dancing with it. You stop trying to survive. You start trying to protect yourself from the moment, and instead you surrender to its intelligence. The greatest truth is this. The answer is not hidden. The answer is not far. The answer is not complicated. The answer is within. It is not a formula. It is a frequency. And that frequency cannot be understood through analysis. It can only be felt through presence. The answer is not a thing to be found. It is a state to be remembered. And silence is the gateway to that remembrance. You were not sent here to perform. You were not sent here to accumulate titles. You were sent here to remember the truth of what you are. You were sent here to learn how to be not someone, but presence itself. You were sent here to know yourself, not as the identity, but as the observer of all identities. And once you know yourself in that way, you are free. Not because the world changed, but because your awareness did. Let the noise fall away. Let the urgency dissolve. Let the chasing end. Let yourself land here, now, in the sacred simplicity of silence, where nothing needs to happen for everything to be complete, where you are not becoming, you are being, where you are not achieving, you are allowing, where you are not demanding from life, you are receiving its grace. And when you emerge from silence, you do not return the same. You return lighter, clearer, more loving. Not because you gained anything, but because you remembered everything. The fog lifts, the heart opens, the mind relaxes, and the soul rejoices because you came back. You came back to yourself. And in doing so, you came back to life. The more you live in silence, the more you become aware of a deeper guidance that was never missing, only muffled. You begin to feel your intuition not as a rare occurrence, but as your native language. You begin to notice synchronicity, where once you saw coincidence, you begin to trust your own path. Not because it is guaranteed, but because it is sacred. And that trust, born of silence, becomes your anchor in a world addicted to noise. No longer do you need to chase what others chase. No longer do you need to explain what cannot be explained. You begin to live gently, yet powerfully. You begin to embody presence, not as an effort, but as your essence. You walk slower, you speak less, you listen more. You watch your own mind with compassion, and you watch others through the eyes of understanding, not judgment. This is the gift of silence. It changes how you see, not what you see. The world remains the same, yet you are different. And in that difference, everything is transformed. You begin to feel beauty in the ordinary. You begin to appreciate what you once overlooked. You see divinity not only in sunsets and temples, but in traffic lights and wrinkles, in the silence between two people who no longer need words to know they are loved. The answer you seek has never been outside your reach, but it has always been outside your noise. And now that the noise is quiet, you can see clearly again. You can feel again. You can breathe in life, not as a means to an end, but as the end itself. Each breath is a prayer. Each moment is a temple. Each act of presence is an offering. And you are the altar. Even your pain becomes different in silence. Not because it disappears, but because it loses its grip. It no longer defines you, it teaches you. It no longer owns you, it flows through you. You begin to see that even your suffering was part of the return. That even the loudest seasons of your life were nudging you back toward quiet. That your heartbreak was not a punishment, but a portal. A sacred crack through which the light could reach you again. The ego resists this truth. It wants things to be more complex, more dramatic. It wants a formula, a story, a reason to cling to its identity. But the soul only wants freedom. And freedom does not need noise. It needs awareness. It needs trust. It needs surrender. Not surrender as defeat, surrender as alignment, surrender as the courage to release what was never yours to carry. When you touch silence deeply, you realize that the self you've been defending was never who you were, that all your walls were made of thought, that all your masks were inherited roles. And in that realization, a soft peace arises, not the peace of the world, but the peace of the soul, a peace that does not depend on circumstances because it was never created by them. You no longer wait for life to be perfect before you feel peace. You bring peace to life as it is. You no longer pray for change from desperation. You pray from gratitude, knowing that even without a single external shift, you are already held, already loved, already home. And from this home, everything becomes possible. The stillness becomes your compass, not because it gives you all the answers, but because it connects you to the source that doesn't need them. You move not with urgency, but with clarity. Not with panic, but with power. Not with fear, but with faith. The world may still pull at you, but you are no longer pulled apart. You return to silence like a river returns to the ocean effortlessly, without question, because it knows where it belongs. And from that place, your very presence becomes a gift to others. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You advise less, but your energy heals. You convince no one, yet your being inspires. Because in a world that shouts, your silence becomes magnetic. In a world that performs, your authenticity becomes medicine. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to earn anyone's respect. You no longer need to pretend, because silence has stripped you down to what is real. And what is real does not need to be explained. It only needs to be lived. And so you begin to live not as a seeker of answers, but as a bearer of presence. Not as someone trying to find their worth, but as someone who finally remembered they never lost it. You are not your history. You are not your habits. You are not even your name. You are the awareness that sees all of it, the consciousness behind the curtain. You are the witness, the still point, the unshakable essence that watches the waves come and go without becoming them. And the more you reside in that space, the more life opens up without force, because life recognizes itself in you. And where recognition flows, miracles do too. This is not philosophy, it is remembrance. This is not theory, it is truth, felt directly when all the distractions fall away. And what remains is not a lesser version of you, it is the real you, the radiant you, the you who never needed fixing, only uncovering, the you who has been silently waiting for you to stop running, to stop pretending, to stop performing, and just be. So sit in silence today. Not to achieve anything, but to release everything. Not to become spiritual, but to remember you already are. Let the silence cleanse you. Let it dissolve your tension. Let it hold your fear without needing to resolve it. Let it remind you that you were never abandoned, only invited. And now, finally, you've accepted. There will still be noise in the world, but you do not have to let it live in you. There will still be moments of doubt, of fear, of noise rising again, but that is okay, because now you know the way back. Now you have tasted what is real. And once you have tasted it, you cannot forget it. You can only return again and again to the place that never left. The answer you seek is in silence. And in that silence, you will not just find the answer, you will find yourself. And in finding yourself, you will discover you were the answer all along. There is a quiet place within you that has never moved, never chased, never feared, and never doubted. It is not stirred by applause, nor silenced by rejection. It is not confused by your pain, nor distracted by your plans. It does not race ahead or fall behind. This place, this sacred stillness is your soul, and it waits for you. The mind is a wanderer, a traveler with no map and too many destinations. It clings to clocks and calendars, forecasts and fears. It builds futures from memory and past from imagination. It thrives on noise. It is addicted to answers, yet it rarely pauses to ask the real questions. It fills your inner world with commentary, comparison, and concern, all in the name of safety, identity, and progress. But what it truly fears is stillness. Because in stillness, the mind loses its throne. In silence, the ego becomes transparent. And when all the stories fade, you are faced with what has always been the radiant presence of the soul, undisturbed, eternal, whole. The soul is never lost. You are never disconnected. What happens is simpler than all the narratives your mind spins to explain the ache inside. The mind wanders and the soul waits. It waits not in judgment, but in love. It doesn't punish you for your detours, your distractions, your dramas. It does not label your delay as failure. The soul is the great witness, the candle that never goes out, no matter how dark the mind storms become. And when you tire of searching, when you finally grow weary of being everything for everyone, it is there quietly glowing, saying, "Welcome home." You see, your suffering is not the result of the world. It is not the fault of your past or the flaws you believe you carry. Your suffering comes from identification, from believing you are the noise in your mind rather than the light in your being. The mind says, you are broken, so fix, The soul says, you are whole, remember. The mind screams, run faster, try harder, control more. The soul whispers, be still. The mind asks, who am I in their eyes? The soul asks, who am I without their eyes? And so the great journey of awakening is not about adding more knowledge, more success, more achievements. It is about subtracting what never belonged to you. It is not about becoming someone, but unbecoming the false ideas that kept you from being. The soul does not shout because it does not need to. Truth never argues with illusion. Light does not battle the dark, it simply shines, and the dark disappears. Your soul does not need to win your attention. It simply waits until you exhaust your addiction to wandering. And oh, how we wander. We wander through roles and titles, forgetting that identity is not essence. We wander through relationships, hoping to find in another what we've forgotten within. We wander through religions and philosophies, mistaking the finger pointing to the moon for the moon itself. We wander through time, trying to resurrect the past or rehearse the future, yet missing the only place the soul lives, now. You cannot arrive where you already are. You cannot earn what you already embody. You cannot chase what has never left you. But the mind will try. It is a master of distractions dressed as desires. It tells you, just one more goal, just one more apology, just one more dollar, one more compliment, one more answer, and then you'll be okay. But your soul does not play that game. It already knows you are okay. Not in the way the world defines it, not in the way the mind demands it, but in a higher, deeper, everlasting sense. You are okay because you are a spark of the infinite. You are okay because you are not the noise. You are the silence behind it. You are okay because you are not the body that breaks or the thoughts that change. You are the awareness that holds them both. But don't expect the mind to applaud this revelation. It thrives on urgency. It fears peace because peace makes it irrelevant. It cannot control what it cannot understand, and it cannot understand what it cannot divide. The soul cannot be divided. It is not part of you, it is what you are. Your mind is a tool, sharp, fast, necessary, but it was never meant to drive the vehicle. It was meant to serve the heart, not rule the being. When the mind leads, you end up exhausted, even when you succeed. When the soul leads, there is rest, even in motion. There is clarity, even amidst uncertainty. There is love, even in the presence of pain. The mind collects. The soul releases. The mind tries to define you. The soul invites you to dissolve into the undefinable. The mind wants answers. The soul becomes the question. What if the peace you're seeking is not found in changing your life, but in changing your relationship to your thoughts? What if your inner war ends the moment you stop believing every fearful thing your mind tells you? What if the path back to joy is not a climb, but a surrender? Surrender, not as weakness, but as alignment. Not as giving up, but as waking up. Surrender to this moment, to this breath, to this eternal now, where the soul waits in quiet presence. Where nothing needs to be fixed, solved, or figured out, only felt, only allowed, only witnessed. In this sacred space, miracles are not performed, they are remembered. You are not here to become something other than what you are. You are here to realize what you've never stopped being. The soul never left. It's just been patiently waiting for the mind to stop chasing clouds and notice the sky. The sky that has always held you, the sky that never fought the storm yet never lost its nature. You don't need more time to be free. You need less mind to notice you already are. Let the mind wander, if it must, but don't follow it. Witness it. the way you would watch leaves float down a stream. Let them pass. You are not the leaf. You are not the stream. You are the stillness beneath the current, the spaciousness behind the motion. You are not what moves. You are what allows movement. And in that realization, something within you will break beautifully. The grip will loosen, the story will soften. And for the first time, perhaps in years, you'll feel it. That quiet radiance, that sacred presence, that home you never truly left. The soul was never impatient. It knew this moment would come. It knew that one day, after all the proving and pushing and pretending, you would fall to your knees, not in despair, but in awe, in surrender, in remembrance. And when you do, the soul does not say, "Where have you been?" It says, "I've been here all along." Because it never needed you to change, it only waited for you to see. And so the return begins not in lightning strikes or grand awakenings, but in the simple turning of attention inward, in the pause between thoughts, in the breath you didn't notice you were holding, in the moment you finally allow yourself to stop running, not because the world has quieted, but because you have. There is no need to chase enlightenment as if it were some distant treasure buried beneath lifetimes of mistakes. It is here, now, humming beneath the surface of your striving. It is in the stillness between your words. It is in the space behind your eyes. It is in the warmth you feel when you stop bracing against life and allow it to wash through you like a river returning to the ocean. The soul does not speak in volume. It speaks in presence. It does not compete for your attention because it knows it cannot be erased, only ignored, and even your ignorance of it cannot diminish its truth. The soul is not altered by your forgetting. It is only hidden behind the clouds of your becoming. But becoming is the way of the mind always trying to become and never quite satisfied with simply being. The mind wants to arrive. The soul wants to dissolve. The mind says, "I am not enough yet." The soul whispers, "You were never less than divine." And that whisper is all it takes, a single silent breath of eternity breaking through the illusion of separation. One moment of deep remembering, and lifetimes of fear begin to fade like shadows at sunrise. You do not need to fix the noise. You only need to return to the silence beneath it. You do not need to control your thoughts. You need only to stop obeying them. Can you feel it now? That subtle warmth in your chest when you let go of trying to understand everything? That sacred exhale when you stop negotiating with your pain and simply sit beside it as a friend who needs no explanation? That is the soul. That is the home your mind forgot it had. There is no need to punish the mind for wandering. It is what it does. It was shaped by the world to do so. It learned early that love must be earned, that safety must be managed, that joy must be delayed. But none of that was true. It was merely inherited, a costume passed down from ancestors too tired to question the script. But you are here now, awake enough to feel the costume tightening, aware enough to know that what you've been calling you is mostly habit, brave enough to shed the mask, even if only for a moment, and feel the vastness underneath. The soul has always been vast. It is not interested in your resume. It does not measure worth by performance. It does not care how much money you have, how many followers approve of your image, or how many tasks you completed before sunrise. The soul is only interested in one thing, your freedom. Not external freedom, but the kind that cannot be revoked, the freedom to be yourself without apology, without disguise, without fear. When the mind runs, the soul waits. It waits like an ancient tree, unmoving, unjudging, deeply rooted in eternal presence. It does not beg you to return. It knows you will. Because no matter how far the mind wanders, it always tires of its own noise. Eventually, the seeking becomes heavy, the striving turns hollow, and the soul, ever still, becomes magnetic. Not because it changes, but because you finally remember how good it feels to come home. That is the true miracle, not transformation, but remembrance. To remember who you were before the world taught you to forget. To remember what it feels like to live without needing permission. To laugh without waiting for the right moment. To cry without justification. To love without walls. You do not need to heal by fixing yourself. You heal by letting go of what was never truly you. The false identities, the limiting stories, the inherited fears, these are not your soul's language. They are the noise the mind learned to speak in a world that had forgotten how to listen. But you can listen again. You can tune back in. You can place your hand on your heart and feel what never left you. The soul waits not in the future, not in the next accomplishment, but right here in the stillness between this breath and the next. The mind will argue. It will insist that stillness is laziness, that presence is unproductive, that peace is earned only after every box is checked. But the soul laughs not with mockery, but with love. Because the soul knows that your worth is not a goal to achieve. It is a truth to reclaim. And when you do, when you stop trying to earn rest and simply rest, when you stop searching for proof, and instead allow yourself to feel, when you stop waiting for a better version of yourself and start embracing this very moment as sacred, something shifts. You begin to hear the soul's voice again. Not as thunder, but as wind. Not as command, but as clarity. Not as pressure, but as permission. You begin to move differently, not out of fear, but out of alignment. Not chasing, but allowing. Not performing, but expressing. And life, which once felt like a battle, begins to feel like a dance. You start to see the world not as an enemy to conquer, but as a mirror reflecting your beliefs, your wounds, your longing to awaken. Every challenge becomes an invitation. Every loss becomes a letting go. Every silence becomes a sanctuary. And in this sacred awareness, you stop reacting and start responding. Because you are no longer a victim of your thoughts. You are the observer, the witness. The vast space in which thought arises and falls like waves on an infinite ocean. And the ocean does not fear the waves. It simply holds them all. The joy, the sorrow, the longing, the grace. The ocean is not afraid of the storm because it knows the storm will pass. It knows that nothing can touch its depth. You are that depth. You are not your thoughts. You are the one aware of your thoughts. You are not your roles, your wounds, or your history. You are the awareness in which all of these things unfold. When the mind forgets, the soul remembers. When the mind doubts, the soul knows. When the mind contracts, the soul expands. And no matter how long you forget or how far you drift, the soul does not lose patience. It does not shame you. It simply waits with infinite grace for the moment you remember. And so the question is not, how do I find my soul? The question is, what am I willing to let go of so I can see it again? Let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the belief that your worth must be proven. Let go of the story that healing must look like strength. Let go of the idea that you must do more to be more. The soul waits for your return, not through effort, but through surrender. And in surrender, you don't lose control. You lose the illusion that you ever needed it. You begin to trust life again. Not blindly, but deeply. Not as a plan to execute, but as a mystery to be embraced. You start to listen to the inner pull that defies logic, but feels like truth. You begin to speak less from memory and more from presence. You stop performing peace and start embodying it. And you realize the mind was never the enemy. It was just scared. It was taught to protect you by controlling everything. But now, the soul is here to teach you another way, a way of trust, of flow, of coming back to the moment where everything already exists. Let the mind wander, it will. But know this, you no longer have to follow. Stay with the soul. Stay with the breath. Stay with the moment. And in that stillness, you will find what you've been seeking all along, not outside you, but as you. You begin to realize that freedom is not the absence of challenges, it is the absence of identification with them. The wind still blows, the storms still pass. The world still moves in cycles of gain and loss, joy and grief, love and letting go. But you remain grounded, not in outcomes, but in awareness. This is the subtle power of the soul. It does not shield you from life, it opens you to it. It does not eliminate pain, it transforms your relationship with it. And in that transformation, you begin to touch the sacred truth beneath every wound, that nothing is wasted, and everything is here to bring you home to yourself. Even your wandering has meaning. Even your forgetting has purpose. The detour is part of the design, for without the mind's noise, how would you recognize the soul's silence? Without the ache of disconnection, how would you treasure the sweetness of remembrance? Without the illusion, how would you ever awaken to the truth? And the truth is this: you were never broken. You only believed you were. You were never alone. You only thought you were. You were never less than whole. You only forgot how to see it. The soul has never once doubted your light, only waited for you to stop dimming it for the comfort of others. You do not owe anyone your dimming. You were not born to be digestible. You were born to be radiant, to be real, to be rooted in the unwavering knowing of who and what you are. A divine expression of a limitless source, choosing to experience itself in human form, and in that form there is forgetting, but there is also remembering, and every moment is an invitation to return. You return through presence, through breath, through compassion, first for yourself, then for all things. You return by forgiving yourself for believing the lies the world sold you, that your worth depended on performance, that your body defined your beauty, that your pain disqualified your power. None of that is real. What is real cannot be taken from you. What is real lives beneath the labels. It shines through your eyes when you're not trying to impress anyone. It pulses in your chest when you tell the truth. Even when your voice shakes, it reveals itself not when you're perfect, but when you're present. And the more present you become, the more you notice how much of your life has been lived in reaction. Not from your soul, but from your wounds. Trying to prove you're enough. Trying to avoid rejection. Trying to hold together the image of someone who's okay, even when you're breaking inside. But breaking is not a failure. It is a doorway. It is what happens when the armor you've outgrown begins to crack. It is the sound of your soul reminding you that you were not meant to live inside a prison of expectations. And so the cracks appear, and through them, light pours in. The light doesn't ask for credentials. It does not request your resume of suffering or success. It enters the moment you stop resisting it, and it begins to show you the truth that your mind could never fully grasp. That you are not here to be fixed, you are here to be freed. Freed from the tyranny of your own thoughts. Freed from the identity built on wounds. Freed from the voice that says, you must become, when the soul already knows, you already are. And in this freedom, you rediscover a sacred simplicity. Life begins to breathe through you, not because you're trying, but because you've stopped obstructing it. Peace returns. Not because you fought for it, but because you stopped insisting it come a certain way. Love emerges not as a transaction, but as your natural state. Because love is what you are when the stories fall away. And when you live from that place, not sometimes, but consistently, courageously, everything changes. Not necessarily outside, but inside. Your reactions become responses. Your fear becomes clarity. Your protection becomes openness. Your life becomes less about managing and more about allowing. Allowing yourself to feel what you feel, allowing others to be where they are without needing to control them. Allowing life to unfold without demanding that it bend to your will. This is not passivity, this is trust. This is alignment. This is what it means to walk with the soul, leading the way, to move not from fear, but from knowing. And when the mind wanders, because it will, you do not shame it. You simply return. Gently, quietly, with compassion. Again and again and again. Until returning becomes your practice. Until presence becomes your path. Until you no longer confuse your thoughts with yourself. The mind will tell you, this is too slow. The soul knows, this is eternal. The mind will scream, what if it all falls apart? The soul whispers, let it. What is real will remain. The mind will say, you must do more. The soul says, you must remember. And when you remember, you don't rise as someone new, you rise as someone true. That is the purpose of this path. Not to escape life, but to enter it fully from the center of your being. Not to deny the world, but to meet it with eyes that see beyond form. Not to reach enlightenment as a destination, but to embody it moment by moment, breath by breath, as your natural state. The soul waits not at the top of the mountain, but at the base of your breath. Not in some distant afterlife, but in the heartbeat you keep ignoring. Not in perfection, but in presence. So let the mind wander. Let it dream, worry, narrate, and debate. Let it dance its dance. But do not follow unless it serves your peace. Instead, turn inward. Listen. Breathe. And find, again and again, the place within that never moved. The mind wanders. The soul waits, and in your stillness, they meet. There is a sacred intelligence in stillness, one the mind cannot calculate. It is not the stillness of doing nothing, it is the stillness of being everything. It is the awareness that does not rush, because it already contains the entire moment. It is the spaciousness behind every movement, the quiet behind every word, the presence beneath every heartbeat. When you begin to live from this place, your life ceases to be a reaction to circumstances. It becomes a reflection of consciousness. You are no longer chasing the external to soothe the internal. You are no longer bargaining with the universe to feel worthy. You simply are. Whole. Now. Enough. And in this state of being, something miraculous happens. Life begins to mirror your alignment. Not always in ways the mind expects, but always in ways the soul recognizes. You stop attracting lessons to wake you up because you are already awake. You stop calling in chaos to force you to surrender because you are already surrendered. You stop seeking from lack and start allowing from abundance. This is the essence of creation, not effort, but alignment. Not struggle, but surrender to the truth that you already carry within. You are not here to prove your power. You are here to remember it. Because true power is not domination, it is embodiment. It is not force, it is presence. It is not loud, it is rooted. And it flows naturally when the mind bows to the soul, when the wandering surrenders to the waiting. The soul is not interested in outcomes. It is concerned only with truth. It does not ask, what can I get? But what can I be? And in being, everything is already included. You were not born to be a prisoner of your mind. You were born to be a portal for grace. And grace is not earned, it is allowed. It flows through the cracks of your surrender. It enters when the guards of your ego grow weary. It does not knock, it does not shout. It waits just like the soul, patiently, lovingly, faithfully. There is no punishment in the delay, only invitation. Every moment you spend wandering is another moment preparing your return. Every illusion chased makes the truth more vibrant when you finally see it. And so the game is not to defeat the mind, it is to transcend it. Not to banish thought, but to see thought for what it is. A ripple on the surface of the ocean, never touching the depth. You are that depth. Not the mask you wear to be liked. Not the voice you mimic to be accepted. not the pain you carry as proof of your strength. You are the timeless, eternal presence in which all things arise and dissolve. You are the still point in a turning world. And the more you rest in that awareness, the more life simplifies. Not because the outer becomes easier, but because the inner becomes clear. You stop resisting what is. You stop grasping for what isn't. You stop apologizing for being you. Because the soul does not apologize, it only shines. And when you align with that radiance, your presence becomes medicine. Not because you fix others, but because your very being becomes a permission slip for them to remember their own. There is no greater gift you can give the world than your own remembrance. Not through performance, but through presence. Not through convincing, but through embodying. So pause, breathe, feel. Feel the place inside you that has never been wounded, never been afraid, never been separate. Feel the space behind your thoughts, the silence underneath your name. Feel the peace that arises not from control, but from surrender. Feel the soul that never left, only waited. Waited for you to stop searching for light outside of yourself. Waited for you to stop earning love that has always been yours. Waited for you to stop pretending, performing, defending, and finally just be. The mind wanders. The soul waits. But the moment you remember, they unite, and you are no longer divided. You are no longer seeking. You are no longer waiting. You are home. And now, you arrive at the place you never truly left, the sacred center of your being. You don't arrive through effort. You don't arrive by conquering the mind or mastering some higher plane. You arrive by remembering, by releasing, by finally laying down the heavy need to understand it all. This is the quiet miracle. That home was never somewhere you had to go. It was always where you are, always beneath the noise, always beneath the names and labels and plans. The soul has never once abandoned you, only waited for your return with the gentleness of a dawn that does not rush and the strength of a mountain that does not move. And maybe that's the point. Not to run faster or try harder or dig deeper, but to become still enough to feel what has always been present, to soften enough to let the light in, to trust enough to let go. The mind will not stop offering its stories. Let it. The world will not stop moving. Bless it. But you are learning to be the one who watches, the one who witnesses, the one who lives from the sacred now where nothing is missing. Because nothing ever was. Your worth is not a question to be answered. It is a truth to be lived. Your peace is not a goal to be earned. It is a frequency to return to. And your soul is not a destination. It is the stillness within your very breath, here, now, whispering, you are already what you seek. So breathe. Let the moment hold you. Let the presence carry you. Let the wandering settle into waiting, and the waiting into knowing. And in that knowing, walk gently through this life, not as someone trying to become, but as someone who remembers. Not as a seeker, but as a presence. Not as a fixer, but as a light. Because you are no longer chasing truth. You are living it, and the soul is no longer waiting. It is finally walking with you. Home, always, now, forever.